world needed him most, he vanished.
I'm dead!
But then,
several months later,
Boom, baby! As you can see, I am not dead!
Oh my god! Okay, it's happening!
Okay.
Alexa, tell me everything is going to be okay.
Here's something I found on the web. According to Wikipedia.org, Everything's Gonna Be Alright is a song by American country music artist David Lee Murphy as a duet with Kenny Chesney.
Thanks, Alexa.
Well, hello there, Walterific.
I'm sorry, God. I should have asked you. I hope I didn't hurt your feelings.
I could be hurting just a little bit.
I'm sorry, God. It's just... I just got back from the dead. And I don't know if anybody knows if I'm still around. And nobody seems to miss me.
Now, I'm not sure if you're aware of the irony of that.
Yeah. Now that you're alive, we can make a new video. We're going to make videos that we want to make. Yeah. I'm going to talk about the movies in my collection.
I'd love to hear what you have to say about them.
But I don't know which movie my first video should be about. Doug, can you help me pick out my first movie?
All right, I'll take a crack at this.
Thanks.
Here we go. No, I'm not going to do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my favorite movie of all time. Listen to that piano, it's so good!
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh that's good, yeah! That's it.
I remember where I was when I first saw this movie, and I don't remember what I thought about it when I watched it, but I remember how I felt about it when it ended. I don't know when I realized it was my favorite movie, but I know why it's my favorite movie, and I'll talk about that. I know it's not a perfect movie, and that's not the point. You can like a bad movie. This is not a bad movie, objectively, and I'm gonna make this distinction really quick. There's a difference between objective and subjective, and I like to think I can objectively tell if a movie is good or bad, and then allow myself to go, I like this bad movie. But really quickly, this movie is not perfect. I'm going to point out several flaws, and there are other flaws that other people probably have noticed, but hopefully, despite those flaws, I can explain why it's my favorite. The reason it's my favorite movie and the reason that I think it's good is because it rewards me for watching it again. And I think that's what a good movie does. You can watch a movie and be like, that was a good movie, and be satiated. But this movie is, that was so good I want to watch it again. And by rewarding, I mean it entertains you, or in the case of this movie, it keeps giving me new information. It's like reading a good book, which I don't read, but I can imagine, I guess, looking at a book. You read through a book, and when you read through it again, you see something that wasn't there the first time, and that's what this movie keeps doing. And that's why I love it so much. Another reason I really like it, and it's not a good reason, but it's because I don't think a lot of people even know about this movie. I don't think a lot of people have seen it.
I don't think many people have.
And that makes it more of a gem. It makes it more of a unique, rare commodity. Everybody has seen Endgame. Everybody has seen, what's the other big grossing movie? Spider-Man No Way From Home Coming Back Away, whatever that is. But not many people have seen this, and so I'm like one of the few, I feel like, who've seen it. But after this, I hope you guys watch the video too. I'm gonna try to talk about the stuff that is not spoilers. Gary Oldman. Everything Gary Oldman
touches
turns to gold. Wait, did that make any sense?
No.
You know what I'm trying to say. Gary Oldman's in this. He's awesome in everything he does. And I think he elevates the movie, and he contributes something to the character. I'll talk about that later. But he's in it, which makes the movie good. Denzel, my boy Danny Boy, also. I mean, like, I love everything I've seen him in, so. You got those two doing it. And Gary Oldman's character is the antagonist, and he's a good antagonist because he's intelligent. Not only does he actively, hinder the protagonist, Danny Boy, but he's intelligent. He does smart things, so there's an actual obstacle for Danny Boy to overcome. I'm not a smart man.
I'm not a smart man.
I do like my fancy pretty colors. This movie does not have a lot of pretty colors, but what it really does have is such an interesting, nice aesthetic. So it's post-apocalyptic. What's that brand of cereal? Post Crunch. That's not what it's called. Whatever. It's post-apocalyptic. Close enough. It's picturesque. When I look at this, I'm like, wow, what's going on here? I want to see more. And when the movie is over, just on the aesthetic alone, I'm interested in the world. I wish there was a sequel. I wish there was a spin-off because I want to see more of what this world is. I really like the way that it shows post-Earth. You know what it is, right? When you see it, oh, post-nuke or whatever, you get the idea. But it's not quite like something you've seen before. Tiny dumb things like this either work for me or against me. So the clouds, for example, I really like what they did with the clouds. The clouds often move at, at least 5 times speed of what relatively is happening on Earth. So you'll see the clouds going by too quickly. I like that. It just makes it kind of otherworldly yet familiar. Although at the same time, a lot of times I notice, I don't know if the audience knows or cares, you can see green screen feathering on the clouds a lot. And it's like, it's not that bad, but it's there. And it's just like, And as I kind of touched on, the soundtrack is pretty awesome. The score is like almost a 10 out of 10. The rest of it, it's thematic and I like it. I'm not saying the whole score is amazing, the whole soundtrack, but the score, yeah. One day I was playing Fallout. I never really played Fallout before, and my brain made the immediate connection to this movie because it's one of the few post-apocalyptic things of media I know, and I was like, big brain, I got an awesome idea. Never played Fallout. I'm kind of into it. I don't really care, but I do care about? The Book of Eli. I put on the soundtrack for the Book of Eli when I was walking around Fallout, and I was just like, yes, I'm super into this game now. And then I was super into it for an hour until the soundtrack ended, and then I stopped playing the game. Now I have to talk about spoilers. So please, watch this movie because I don't want to spoil it for you. And I don't want it to be ruined. So please watch it, okay? Now it's time for
spoilers.
I have to tell you what the big twist is at the end now so that I can explain all the observations and notes I made throughout the movie. Otherwise, you'd have to watch it through twice in this review. So the big twist at the end is he's blind. He's so blind. He is so completely blind. And I say it because apparently I've looked this up a little bit. There's a big debate, I guess. People haven't unanimously agreed that he's blind, but he's so horrendously blind. He's so blind, okay? I'm agitated by the thought that anyone could think he's not blind, and I will make my points known, but he is blind, okay? He's blind. He's so goddamn blind. He's blind all the goddamn time.
I'm not blind 23 hours a day or 22 hours a day. I'm blind the whole goddamn time.
That's the main reason this movie is great to watch through twice, because you watch it and you go, ah. And I'm going to point out every instance I personally noticed. I didn't look this stuff up. I've personally noticed it goes, there's a sign that he's blind. Some of these are way more obvious than others. Some of them you could toss up to, which is why some of these are so clever. And this is the thing that keeps rewarding me about this movie. I keep seeing these things or hearing these things that go, oh, ooh, he's blind. It was in front of me. It was there. Okay, anyway. First note, clicking. He makes this clicking noise. I don't know what that is, honestly. I just assumed it was a blind thing. So all of my blind viewers, please write in the comments what you do when you're blind. Okay, so he makes this clicking noise. This is the first time with the cat. It's the most auditory, loudest. It's the first time it happens, and I think it's loud on purpose for us to have it in our brains that that's a thing that he does. I assume that's a blind thing. I assume it's a, not echolocation. I don't know. I haven't been blind very much, so I think it's a sign of being blind, the clicking thing. And the fact that it's hidden sometimes makes me think that's a clue. But anyway, I'll point all that out. Right there, he throws his bag under the car door when he didn't need to do that, right? Why would you do that? How often do you, when you approach something, hit it with something first? Huh? How often? Never. You know why he did that? Because he's blind. And I'll get used to it. I'm going to say that like 50 times. Immediately after that, look at him. He looks inside the car. He reaches down for some reason, feels for the pedals or something. But as soon as he finds a skeletal bone, he's like, oh, there's a person in here and I didn't see because I'm blind.
Because I'm blind.
But when you're watching this, that's what's so clever about it. You don't think about him being blind. It's just, but when you draw attention to the fact that it's weird behavior, it's like, oh, which is why it's beautiful.
Which is why it's beautiful.
Next example of him being blind. He's in the house, and for some reason he puts his hand up on the shelf and he just draws the dishes with him, which I thought he was just, effing around. And maybe you would if you were in a post-apocalyptic place, making a mess. But you know why else he might do that? Because he's blind. Oh, by the way, I should say, I had to restrain myself from pointing out every time that I think he's blind. I only included most of them. There are other examples in here that I've noticed. I'm like, yeah, he's blind. But I just felt they weren't quite as strong as others. But they're all there. They're all over the place, okay? So when I annoy you with this joke that he's blind, know that I am showing restraint, okay? He goes to the faucet, and what was that? Instead of reaching for the thing, he grabs the nozzle, and then he feels like he didn't know it was there, and he pulls it towards himself. And then when the nozzle is there, he knows that the faucet's there because he's blind. Now listen to this. So when I watched this with headphones one day, this is one of those things that came out after many repeated viewings. I didn't notice this till later. I was like, what was that? Did he just smell? If you turn the volume up, you can hear that he smells. And well, I mean, you don't have to be blind to smell that there's a body. You, as a blind person, would obviously have other heightened senses. So smell is one of them, and that gets brought up a lot. He mentions other senses quite subtly, and I'll point those out. But he smells a body in the closet, essentially. When he walks over there, check this out. He walks straight into a table. This is one of the first things I noticed. When I realized that that was weird and not normal and not what someone would do, and the fact that I had seen that big obvious one, that's a big blind thing right there. That's a kind of a red alarm. The fact that I hadn't noticed it for so long really tickled me, and that's when I was like, okay, I like this movie. So this one's tentatively blind. Like if you could see this and you open this closet door, yeah, I'd maybe be scared too, especially because they turn the volume way too high to scare you in the audience, which I think is kind of cheap. He would also do that if he was blind. If you're blind, you're opening a door and it makes a big loud noise. Yeah. So that's a tentatively blind, but he's blind. This iPod bit tickled me because I have one of those, or I'm certain I have one of those. I had one. I tried to go find it in storage just to make a quick joke. If I find it, I'll show you. But if you turn the volume up, you can hear the iPod winding up. Those iPods, you could feel the motors and discs spinning, and you could hear that noise that's in the film. It's quiet, but it's there. Anyway, they gave enough of a crap to make an authentic iPod wind-up noise that I, as a user from that long ago, would know. By the way, I realized on a more later viewing that the iPod kind of is a hint or an indicator of how long this post-apocalyptic world has been going on. We're told he's been walking for 30 years, roughly. He doesn't know. So if this iPod existed, and if this iPod was made in 2010, is my guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's right. That would mean that, assuming also iPod production stopped when the apocalypse happened, that means it's at least 2040. So I'm sure there are a bunch of people online who have speculated and figured this stuff out. Okay, next example of clicking. Look at this. Less obvious than the first time, but it is there. Okay, here's a tentative example of being blind. Not a good one, but I started to see it this way. When he's reading his book for the first time, it looks like he's looking down at his book. But on a later viewing, it looked to me as if, wait a minute, his eyes aren't looking down. His eyes aren't looking at all. His eyes are actually closed. And you know why his eyes are closed? Because he's blind.
Did I stutter? I'm blind.
But no, it's tentative because maybe he just has squinty eyes. I have squinty eyes. I had somebody once ask me if I was Japanese, to which I said yes, because I have squinty eyes. When I smile, my eyes disappear. Or when I, like I can see you clear, but they're really squinty. But anyway, maybe I thought maybe it just looks like his eyes are closed. But if he is blind and his eyes are closed, that makes sense. I don't know, tentative. I still wanted to point it out because it was interesting. He gets woken up by the sun, as a lot of people would. But you know what? The sun would still wake you up if you were blind. And this is important. The sun as a thing is used in the film because it's used basically to tell him what direction is west, which is kind of his whole point in the movie, is to go west. With the sun, he knows which way is west. And when he looks out the window here, he's looking up at the sun, which is kind of weird. But then he closes his eyes and feels the sun. That's very clearly illustrated. And he's feeling the sun because he's blind. Now, you could say, oh, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry, guys. You could say he's feeling the sun because who doesn't feel the sun? But if you're blind, you really have to feel it. Whatever. The sun is a tool that is used for him as a blind person to know where to go. That's important. Because if you were blind and needed to go west, what would you do? You would feel the sun. I'm doing something very special here. I'm opening myself up to you. And I'm sharing these things that I've noticed. And we're going to reciprocate. And I'm hoping and betting that there's some of you who have seen this. And you're going to comment something that I haven't noticed before. And it's going to make me love this movie even more. Okay? This is special. Didn't notice this till recently. It's the second example of him smelling. It's more audible this time, but you have to listen for it when he turns his head. Which clearly isn't him. That's the Foley guy going. But, you need this sound, so. Now listen to this.
And the only good thing about no soap is that you can smell hijackers a mile off.
Yes, that is explained even if you have sight. But being able to smell people also makes sense if you're blind. And check it out. They actually backed it up because later another blind character says that she can smell Carnegie's leg.
Your leg, I can smell it.
Which is a byproduct of her having heightened senses from being blind. So it makes sense for someone like her to do that. Therefore, someone like him to smell people further away. It's not that people smell so bad, although I'm sure they do. It's because he has heightened senses, because he's blind. That's why that exists. I thought this was kind of interesting. It's not important at all, but look at this little framing right here. He says he smelled us from 30 feet away, and then we get this shot. And very conveniently, we have a bridge with a height marker on it, 14.6. And I was like, well, then you could actually take Eli. Let's just say he's 6 feet. You could lay him over. And you could, and you could figure out, okay, yeah, that's about 30 feet. I'm like, okay, cool. Again, not a big deal, but I was like, it's kind of cool that everything is presented right there and you have the tools to figure it out. That's cool. So when he lifts his weapon to him, he turns around and looks into the darkness. And you assume that's because he's thinking about retreating, which maybe he is. But there's another reason he might do that, and that would be because he's blind. No, see, he's looking behind him into a dark tunnel, and if he knows he's going to fight, he would know it would behoove him to fight in the dark where he has the advantage. That's what he's thinking when he's looking back. Not a good example of being blind, but he stumbles over something by the cart on the way out. Probably just kicking around, being nonchalant, but just enough for me to want to include it. Please seems to be a magic word in this movie where almost every single time somebody says it, their request is granted, with the exception of two. The first one, the last one. Now, I don't want to count this first one because technically a character doesn't say it. It's an extra or something like that, but technically she says please, and technically it doesn't get answered. In the end, that one also kind of technically passes because you'll see it would be hypocritical if I didn't mention all the pleases, but I noticed every time someone says please, their request is granted, so I just had to mention it. So I don't know if this is a trope or a cliche, but there's a thing where two sounds are transitioned and molded together. So in this one, it's people screaming or voices that transitions into a bell. And this happens 3 times in the movie. Not those specific noises, but the trope, whatever it's called. We need to come up with a name for this, by the way. It's an editing technique. It happens 3 times. This is the first time it happens. Not a good example of being blind, but I just couldn't help but include it because he puts his hand over the flame, which I thought, it looks normal. But again, I've just been looking into it too much. I was thinking maybe he does that because he's blind. And if you were blind and you were flickering a lighter, it sounds the same regardless whether or not the flame is on or not. So how would you know if the flame is on? If you put your hand over it and felt it. So don't know if it's a blind thing. If it is, if it was intentional, right? Then that's pretty smart. He hears a motorcycle gang coming to town. He doesn't see him coming to town because he's blind. But this is not a good example because even if he could see them, he would almost certainly recognize the motorcycle gang by sound first. But I still needed to include it. Again, there are many examples like this that are tenuous blind examples, but I left them out. I'm including some of them, okay? Just so you can understand how tenuous some of these get.
Hasselfeld, Error.
Okay, here's the second time that the word please is used. The first time this character of Melina Kunis uses it.
Can you please move?
Now I'm going to go ahead and criticize this. This is one of my problems with the movie. Okay, so something I was saying earlier is that Gary Oldman adds to the movie. And what I mean by that is, yes, anybody could play the character of Carnegie, but when Gary Oldman did it, he created or brought life to it something in a specific way that no one else could. And so if he wasn't in this movie, that part of it would be lost. Inversely, Melina Kunis' take on this character adds nothing.
Oh, Mindy. Poor Mindy.
It's not bad, but it's like if you just took the paper off of the script and you put a person on it, there you go. That's like your baseline. There's nothing being added. Again, it's not bad, but you could not take out Gary Oldman. If you took out Gary Oldman, for example, and replaced him with somebody else, the movie may not be bad, but it would be different. It wouldn't be the same. If you took her out and replaced her with somebody else, the movie wouldn't change. And that's unfortunate. That's just my criticism. She was fine, but she didn't add. There was no spice. There was no flavor. Where are the chips?
There is no flavor. There are no spices. Where are the chips?
That poor guy's name tag. I assume it's not his name. It may have been the name of the guy before him. Maybe it was the company. Either way, on set, somebody decided, I'm going to make the name tag BJ. And he got away with it. Someone intentionally made it say that. So why not draw attention to it? This is my favorite line in the movie. Not the one I quote the most. I'll mention that one, but this is my favorite line. It's just badass to me.
I don't want any trouble.
Because... Oh, I forgot to mention something earlier with the mouse. Okay, let's jump back in time. Okay, so the scene with the mouse is actually important because it establishes Danny Boy's character. It shows him as, because he's in a situation we understand as in a post-apocalyptic world. He's obviously short for food. And as soon as this mouse presents itself, you expect him to kill this mouse and have it for food. But instead, he chooses to be generous and give to the mouse, which is inconsequential, except without saying much of anything, we get some insight into his character. He's generous. He's not inherently violent. It's a nice little touch. We get other things like that, and I like when a character is established without dialogue, and that's a nice little way that they did it. Anyway, right here, when he says, I don't want any trouble, it's badass. This is, I'm going to go on a tiny tangent about meekness, or what I think meekness is. Meekness is, you are strong and capable, but you don't go looking for a fight. You fight only when absolutely necessary. And that's exactly what he is. He doesn't want to hurt people, but if he has to, he will kick your ass. And so he genuinely does not want any trouble. It's like, he's not saying it this way, but it's like, for your sake, please don't fight me because I will completely destroy you. But he's so humble about it. I love it. This is something I noticed right away and it bugged me and there's no good reason for it to me. But when they charge in to fight, one guy goes before the fighting starts as if he died. It's funnier the longer you notice it. It's not, I don't know what happened there, but it's not correct. And then Melina Cantina shows up to say please again, and guess what? He stops magically like she asked. Wow.
By who?
By whom? A smartass like Gary Oldman's Carnegie should know that, and it just stuck out to me and I had to say it and be an asshole.
You get blinded in the war by the sun after.
Now this is really important. This is really important because, well, a few things. One, it establishes his character a little bit, which is nice. It shows his compassion, but also it leads to the idea that he himself might be blind, because aside from his compassion and him just engaging this lady, this would interest him if he himself was blind. He'd want to know, well, how were you blinded? Were you like me, or were you born this way? You know? So I think that's another little clue that, hey, blindness is a thing. And also there is a third blind person. It's a lady cutting Carnegie's face hair. And so blindness as a thing in this universe is established. So it's not so strange, or it wouldn't be so strange if he himself was blind, specifically by the war, as he mentions.
Who said anything about me? I was sitting Solar.
It's really bright in here.
That seems like a throwaway line to say that it's really bright in here when it doesn't look very bright. But if it is bright, there would be a good reason for the Book of Eli to have his room bright. You know why? Because he's blind, or this is a point of contention and something I might be willing to settle on. If he's not blind, he is goddamn near mostly blind. If he was losing most of his sight, it makes sense in his own space to have the lights on as much as possible. She wouldn't have improvised that because that doesn't make any sense. It seems very intentional for them to have written the character to say it's really bright in here. I can't think of another reason for that to be intentionally placed in there other than to be another clue that he's blind. Melina Kunis says please a third time, and it works. He lets her stay. And then the next scene is this is kind of a mark against it. It's a cliche. This isn't just a trope, it's a cliche. Chess scene with the villain playing chess. Ain't that a trope? Yes, it is. If this didn't exist in movies already where the villain plays chess to show you how smart he is, then I'd be like, ooh, but no, we've seen this already. Although I will give it one little point. If on a close-up of the chessboard, you can see that some places have been on the chessboard, you can see that some pieces have been replaced with other things. Like I think there's a candle and a bullet casing, which is really cool and realistic because it'd be very unlikely to have a full chess set. And bottle caps, which I don't know if it was intentional, but that's a nice touch.
That's a nice touch.
Kind of a, not a trope, but maybe a nod to Fallout because bottle caps is the currency. I thought that was kind of cool.
Can I see it?
No, you cannot.
She asks if she could see it. He says, no, you cannot. You know why she cannot? Because she's blind. Everyone's blind now.
It's just a new book.
Shut the fuck up.
Dear Lord.
This is one of those tiny things that I notice that I'm going to subjugate you to for watching this video. But that's another tiny thing I'm going to subjugate you to. There are these things that most people don't notice because they're fine. There's really nothing wrong with them, but they are there. And because I care about movies and videos, I notice these things. Look at this shot when he comes up the stairs and the camera swings around and it looks to the left. Now that's fine. It works. But my brain goes, wait a minute. Carnegie was like right there, and now he's right the way over there. That spatially doesn't make any sense. Therefore, that shot doesn't make sense. That isn't how did that happen. And I quickly realized, well, we're looking at two different shots. You're looking at a shot of him walking across the balcony, and when the camera flies up, he is clear across. Now the timing is about right, but it looked wrong. And so if you go frame by frame on this swing, what you're seeing is two composited shots. You're seeing two shots strung together. But it's kind of a common thing to use camera swing to do a transition. Well, they combine two shots here. And one clear example of that to me is this white on the edge of the frame. It doesn't belong there. What that is the edge of the frame on the second take. And also, when you do it, you can see Carnegie just masticize into frame. Whatever. The point is, it's two shots stitched together. And it looks good, but I noticed that it's not correct. But, you know, what are you going to do? Not important, but I'm going to make you look at it. Context, if you're not watching the movie and if I'm not showing all of it, this guard somehow let Danny Boy go, or more specifically, Danny Boy escaped the guard's grasp. So the goon does this to a subordinate. He fired that guy. Another thing you'll see in a lot of movies, sometimes it's less obvious than others. This was a less obvious one, therefore I tend to let these slide. But when a character moves their lips, but they don't say anything, or the other way around, they're saying something but their lips don't move, where it's clearly changed after the fact. Again, this is very small, easy to miss, therefore I'll let it slide. But if you look at Danny Boy, his lips move after he says, "Tell him I made you do it," and he says something else with his lips, but he's not saying anything, which really makes me wonder what he said. Hey, for all those people who can read lips, please let me know what your best guess is to what he said. I looked at this and I was like, what did he say? And why did they remove it? No idea, but it's there. He steps outside. He's about to go on his way, but what does he do? He looks to the sun, feels the sun. He could be looking at it, but he can't because he's blind. Feels where it is and knows where west is and starts walking. This clicking is not very obvious, but he does it a third time right here after he says one way to find out. It's quiet, but it's there.
One way to find out.
Look. Look.
Which is so peculiar. It's quiet and it's there and it's intentional. What does it mean? I want to know. I assume it's because he's blind, because he's very blind. Carnegie gets his first chance of saying please. He asks Redridge to shoot him, please, which, I mean, he tries to shoot him, but he can't because Danny Boy is so badass. Here's the second time that sound transition happens. We go from a crying baby to wind or something. Now, here's the line that I say the most.
I don't like being followed.
If a sentence was a spirit animal, that sentence would be my spirit animal. I don't like being followed. And when I think I'm being followed, I say that to myself. I don't like being followed. Because I'm not brave enough to yell out, I don't like being followed, when there's nobody actually there and I was wrong. Although, it did occur to me at one point and maybe when he's walking, he just says, I don't like being followed. I don't like being followed. I don't, until eventually somebody walks up behind him and he's eventually right.
I don't like being followed. 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 I don't like being followed.
I want to come with you.
First try.
You're such a liar.
I'm not a liar.
I was like, yeah, he's not a liar. Although actually, unfortunately, he did lie. He deceived her by saying, I think I left my glasses inside. When in fact, he does not think he left his glasses inside, which would be a lie. That's not what she was talking about, but technically he did lie. So I gotta point that out.
It's happened before. And it'll happen again.
Question I'd like to outsource to the audience. To this day, I do not know what that means. It's happened before and it'll happen again. I assume he's referencing something that happens in the Bible, like a story, or maybe something that happened in history where a Bible was used to, I don't know. I have no idea what he's talking about. I feel like I should. I don't think it's meant to be a mystery. Clearly there's intent. So please, this is the main question I'd like to outsource to the audience, I think. What does that mean? What's your interpretation of that? Please help me. Share.
We lost a lot of men. You need me more than ever. Now you say that book's worth the trouble. Well, I believe you. But I want Solara for it.
Oh. Why not?
Question. How did she escape? She was locked behind a door with a guard, okay? And now she's here. So that means she got out. But if she got out, there is a guard there who presumably saw her with Eli, who is the enemy to Carnegie, and was probably involved with incapacitating him, therefore making her an accomplice of Eli, which makes her bad. So if she left the door somehow, which most likely was because somebody on the outside opened it for her, regardless, she had to go by that guard, who would have then reported to Carnegie, yo, what's her name? I was going to call her Miranda Keys for some reason, although that'd be cool if she played Miranda Keys, not important. What's her name? I'm very bad at names. I don't mean this as a sign of disrespect. I'm just bad at names in general. Mila Kunis is bad, therefore they would not let her leave. Okay? That makes sense? She shouldn't have gotten here. It makes no sense. There's a big piece of the movie missing. I haven't been able to figure out how that's possible. My best guess is the guard gets incapacitated without having her allegiance to Eli revealed by being blinded and or whatever. And a civilian comes across who shouldn't know about this place, but maybe she does. A civilian comes and lets her out, doesn't think anything of the incapacitated guard, and lets Mila go out into the wilderness. Very, very tenuous at best. That's a bit of a problem. It didn't take me out of the movie. It just, when I noticed, I was like, so...
What is that?
Dinner. It's going to be really important in the story later.
Did you hear that noise? I think it plays on the left. It's like, it's like a, I don't know, listen to that noise. When I hear that, I instantly think of Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace. It's like, or something like that. I know it's not the same noise, but it's so similar. And I don't know what that noise is in the movie. I don't know what the point is, but it's there. And my brain just went like, listen to this, and it put them together. Question, trope, cliche, whatever it's called, this look that he gives. That's a look that we all understand. It's a look that means like, I hate you, whatever it means. We've all seen it. It exists in movies. My question is, what is that look called? If there isn't a name, let's please agree on a name.
Will you read some to me? Please?
Mila says please for a fourth time, asking him to read to her, and he does. Another tiny, tiny thing that I am fascinated with and love, and I'm going to share. Listen to the way he says burned.
Sun came down and burned everything.
Did you hear that?
And burned everything.
Did you hear what he did with his voice?
Burned everything.
That is something that exists with certain actors more so than other ones. And I love that. I've wondered what that's called when you take a single syllable like a vowel and you just, you extend it by going uppercase, lowercase, burned everything. I like the way that sounds. It's not natural for us American speakers, but it does exist, and it's like used for a form of dramatism or whatever, and I think it's because he's acting. Anyway, you'll hear that like Gandalf does that all the time. All the time.
Wielder of the flame of Arnor, Arnor, flame of Udun, Udun.
The sword of Elendil. Although that was a fake one. That was, like, it's really hard to do that naturally. Tiny, 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 tiny thing that most people don't notice or care about. I care about it. Anyway, the end of the story. I was like, what's that called? There's a word for that, right? And without knowing where it came from, the word popped into my head. Tremolo. I was like, I don't even know what that word means. I looked it up. That's it. And I love when actors do it naturally. Are you annoyed with me yet for pointing out these tiny, stupid things? Burned everything. Blind! No, I'm kidding. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, no. Now, here's a nice, not subtle indication that he's blind.
Walk by faith, not by sight.
Pretty darn clear indication that he's blind, okay? Or at least that's the excuse they give. Which, you know, as far as excuses go in movies, right? Like, the lamest one is, it was all a dream. That's probably the worst one. The second one is maybe it's magic. It's some kind of force we're not meant to understand. Unfortunately, faith works the same way as far as, I don't know, narrative explanation.
Works the same way.
But it's a bit closer to earth than dreams and magic, I think. So I let blind slide, especially because of the way they use it. Now, if they were just like, if you said that 3 times, oh, I walk by faith, and they really hammered it in, it'd be annoying. But they just do like bits of seasoning and little, here's a gumball on top. I don't know. But like, I think they use the faith thing in place of sight very well. That I like it. It's acceptable. He clicks again, I think for the 4th time. I lost count. And then check this out. Instead of walking up a step like a normal person would, what does he do? He stumbles into the stairs or chooses to kick it. It looks more like he chose to kick it, which doesn't make sense. Again, it's like, why would you do that? Why would you throw something at the car to verify that there is something in front of you? He stumbled because he's blind. 3 in a row. He walks up to the door and puts the shotgun barrel, and look at this. It's almost as if he's trying to see what's in front of him, or surprised that there was something in front of him, because the gun hits the door and he looks down at the gun like, I mean, he looks down at the door like, The real question is, who's that? Now, what was happening? I was Googling something for the Book of Eli. That's right. I was looking to try to find a picture to edit for the thumbnail. And it pulled up the cast of the Book of Eli. And I saw the actors. I was like, oh, yeah, Danny Boy and Garrel. And I was like, who's this guy? I don't recognize him in the movie. Who is this actor? I clicked on him. I forgot the name, but it says best known for playing in the Harry Potter movies as a character named Dumbledore. was like, what? And look at this guy. Does he look familiar now? No. It's because he's acting. He's acting like somebody else. No, seriously, that's Dumbledore from the latter movies. That's Dumbledore 2 right there. And for the longest time, until very recently, did I know that's freaking Dumbledore. And it's awesome. When he takes the shades off, it's easier to see that it's Dumbledore, but because he doesn't have a beard and the fact that he changes his accent completely, he's almost unrecognizable, which I love. I was like, what a treat. It's Dumbledore with a shotgun. Then he asks Eli.
No trespassing. Haven't you read the sign?
To which Eli says, I can't read it because I'm blind.
I'm very sorry I didn't see it.
I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this. It's just a thought and an opinion. But when these people play music and it cuts to Mila and Eli, you can see she's smiling really bright. She looks genuinely happy. For the first moment, I don't see someone acting, although this is kind of beside my point. She looks genuinely just so happy at hearing music, which made me think, I don't know if this is important or this is what was intended. I was thinking, oh, this is probably the first time she's ever heard music. How wonderful would that be? Okay, Mila, you're hearing music for the first time. How do you act it? Well, probably really happy. So that's cool. That's a cool idea in this post-apocalyptic world that no one's really heard music. Now, Eli's got an iPod. He's special. But then I thought, well, maybe she would have heard music because she's under Carnegie, who's the leader of a town, and he has resources. If Mila was being tasked with acting like you're hearing music for the first time, 100% I believed your acting and it was phenomenal. If that's what was intended, that's what I'm reading, and it made me happy. It also just added a little layer to the world, and if that's all intended, good job, Mila.
Is that good? Rich. A bit rich, but okay.
Have you got any more weapons?
Weapons? I'll show you some weapons. And then he pulls out a wand.
Shit!
What? So I think the sequence is really cool, and I think that it makes sense. They're calling for the book, and then they throw out a book. But it turns out this book is not a book. It is a book-shaped bomb, to which I couldn't help but wonder, where in the balls did they get and construct a book-shaped bomb in about 15 seconds? It's not even 15, 10 seconds. If Eli had this as a decoy, where was it? Was he carrying a bomb in his backpack? I guess that's possible, but I was like, that's tenuous, right? I don't really believe that he had a book-shaped bomb prepared. I wouldn't. I'm not that smart. But even if you didn't, it's okay because that's clever. That actually makes sense. That's a great way to initiate a fight, I think. So that's cool, but it made me go like, wait a minute. I love the blocking of this shot. I like how he's surrounded. I like how there's space in between. I like how it's 4 and 4 and 1. Although I'm pretty sure Danny Boy missed his blocking mark by 1 or 2 feet. I think he's supposed to be centered in this frame. This is the first time that he's like truly alone. And as we're about to get the interpretation, even God has left him or something like that. It's not important. But I like the way this is shot. I'm reading too much into it. Just wanted to share this. I think he needs to move over it, but just like, boop, like that, and it's perfect. Then Redridge gets to say or ask please, which works because it's magic.
How dare you stand where he stood?
I was going to say, I like the way this is shot, which is like a pun. It's like the fired pun, but not as good. I wasn't trying to make the joke, but the joke just happened. I like the way this is shot. Not the way Eli is shot, but I like the way this is shot. So this is a shock to the audience. Like, oh no, he got shot.
Got shot.
But if you look at this, you kind of take it apart like frame by frame. Just interesting choices that I wouldn't have thought of. So the lightning bolt, I might have thought of. I like it quite a bit. But what really gets to me is the way that they have 2 different cameras. And then for some reason, they let the second one just ascend. Almost like, and I don't think this is the interpretation that you're meant to get, almost like you're the one who has been shot and you've lost your bearings. But it's just the right amount of, because they're doing the slow-mo stuff, which is normal, but first they do the lightning strike, the otherworldly whoa. But what gets to me, so small, so subtle, just the camera going up and then we're back to it. It's like, it's disorienting and jarring, but not too much. That's intentional. Someone thought that was the right thing to do. And I was like, yes. Oh, and here's the third sound transition after we're at this slow-mo sequence. Instead of going from people and screaming to a noise, we go from the noise of the gunshot into a scream. Oh, if you want to see what good acting is, look at my boy, Danny Boy. You can see on his face several emotions strung together just on the face, man. It's confusion, and then it's sadness, and then like this acceptance, and still confusion. Man, I don't see Denzel Washington. I see a man who has just had his world turned upside down and doesn't know anything anymore. And it's good. It's good. Good job, my I was gonna say my friend. I wish Danny was my friend. Good job, dude. Now, I wasn't looking for this, but I couldn't help but notice because I'm an asshole who sees these things, but that's two different shots once again put together. Really easy to see if you go into it and go back and forth in frames. But if you go between the truck that's driving towards you and the truck that blows up, very clearly two different trucks, two different points in time. You can even see like some kind of feathering around it. But I mean, if I had to put this shot together, short of just blowing up a truck that's in motion, which would have been cooler, it works. The shot works. I just thought it was kind of interesting. You can see it's clearly two different takes. They draw attention to his ability to smell once again when he says, do you smell that in the air? Instead of, well, I was going to say you see that in the air. He smells salt in the air because he's blind.
Get the engineer!
Engineer!
Here's some other very good intentional word choice. He doesn't say it looks like a museum. He says it feels like a museum.
Feels like a museum.
You know who says that? You know who says what a place feels like, not what a place looks like?
Let me say it real slow and real loud. I'm blind.
Do you think I could see it?
No, you can't see it. You know why he can't see it? Because he's blind. Okay, now I'm going to go on this tangent. This kind of goes nowhere, but I'm sharing my experience, okay? So the first time I saw this movie, it was at this very specific moment where that clicked with me because I was slow. I'm still pretty slow, but I was slower then. At this very specific moment, it occurred to me, he's blind, which is about the time you're supposed to figure it out. It's at the end, but at this moment, right when he says, let there be light, and it's not for the reason you'd think. It's not because all the pieces came to my mind, which they kind of did. But I saw something that wasn't there. But I saw it so clearly. I think it was just my understanding manifesting visually. But when he says, let there be light, I swore I saw his eyes just glazed over. Like a blind person's eyes. Like, oh, this whole time I didn't realize he can't see. And it's also because he has a bit of that lazy eye thing going on, which I have too. I don't think this is intentional. But I saw, oh, very visually, this guy, he can't see, he's blind. I've looked for it when I've watched this movie over again, and I've never seen it. So I know for a fact I saw something that wasn't there. Anyway, that's just one memory I have. That's when I realized, oh, he's blind. This is Carnegie's second time saying please, and the second time the word please fails. She says you have to read it, please, and she does not because she cannot. Claudia can't read the book, or so she says. I'm certain this is intentional. You could either question or decide that she can read or is feigning ignorance. It's one or the other. And I like it that way. I like it to where you get to ask or decide for yourself. Me personally, I think that she actually forgot. I think that's more satisfying too, because that way his plan truly failed and it was out of his control and he had no chance of succeeding.
Your leg.
My leg!
Okay, so that's basically the movie. Now I want to talk about the sequel that we'll never get. So they set this up a little bit. The movie obviously is meant to work on its own, and it does work on its own. But like I said, I wish there was more.
I want more.
I like the world that this takes place in, and the stakes aren't world-ending, not really. They are big, but they're small. I like when you can invest in a story when the stakes are like someone getting shot, not the planet is going to blow up. You know, I prefer that. Anyway, I wish there was more. I love this. There's nowhere for the story to go because Eli is freaking dead. However, they went ahead, it seems, and put in what they need to have the potential for a sequel with Mila's character. She takes his garb and she takes his weapon. She takes all his stuff and she says she's going home, which I was like, okay.
Okay.
But they did put this together. They had a throwaway line, but it exists. And I thought it was good relatively for what they might have been trying to do. I don't know how far ahead they thought, but she says she's going home. What's the significance of going home? What does she have to do? Well, earlier, actually, when she catches up to Eli in the wilderness, she says, I hate it here, talking about home. And then Eli says, then change it.
And change it.
But then the dialogue just runs on by like he didn't even say anything. Like it's not important. But he did acknowledge it, and he told her to change it. So with that information, she could go home and I guess the town's out of order and Carnegie's down or not and I don't know, stuff is in turmoil there. So there is something for her to do, I guess. But the sequel wouldn't be the Book of Eli. It'd be something completely different. If she has a mission, if she did take over, I don't know, what do you call that? God's servant emissary role, and then his role is for her to go change the town. I don't know. Okay. If the stakes aren't as grand as the thing that's going to kind of change the world to My Little Town, it kind of seems like a step down. I think it'd have to be a spin-off. But I would be okay with a spin-off, not a sequel. Another story, whatever. Because I want to see more of that world. I just liked it a lot. And it's kind of a shame that it went nowhere. I don't know if many people have seen this movie, but those who have, never have I heard one who said, I didn't like it. They like this movie. And I like to think it's because it's a good movie. I'm going to go ahead and get on to my rating now. Now, like I said, I know it's not a perfect movie. There are better ones, objectively. But there are none that I like more, because no more make me feel more satiated and rewarded and not treated like an idiot. No one likes being treated like an idiot. And too many movies these days treat their audiences like they're stupid. This one I like to think is going, come on now. Come on. We gave you everything you need. Just watch it again. Just pay attention. Anyway, that's why I love this movie. I keep finding things. Only recently did I notice some more stuff. But I just keep hearing and seeing. It's great. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I know it's not perfect, but it's my favorite movie of all time. So what do you think I'm going to rate it?
Ten out of 10. Godsend.
Well, I finally did it. Feels good to get that off of my chest, out of my ass. Mac, bro, you were choking at the end of this video.
This video is almost an hour long.
Yeah, but it's one file, and you have dedicated video encoders, plural. So
I can handle it many open sources.
You have 64 gigabytes of RAM, and you have enough memory bandwidth.
The project file was over 100 gigabytes.
It doesn't matter what the file sizes are. Big Lac deals with the raw data. You're working with proxies, and your SSD has a read and write speed of over 5,000 megabytes.
It's too much.
Listen, you little shit! I own you. You're adopted. You're never going back to Malaysia. You're never going to see Abdul again. And if you think that my little YouTube videos are too much for your 48 cores, I'll open so many goddamn Chrome tabs I'll give you a reason to joke! And God, thanks for helping me pick that out. Starting with my favorite movie really was a no-brainer.
I'm happy to do it. I thought it was the best movie ever made, and I still like it quite a lot.
And I'm sorry again about this morning.
Do not hesitate to reach out to me.
I will. Well, I'm gonna go upstairs and find a window to stare out of. See you later.
Talk to you soon.
I miss my family.